My name is Rob Kellogg, and today we're going to talk about arc flash awareness. Now, normally you're going to be taking this course, which requires anywhere from 8 to 16 hours in order to get your certifications, those of us who are exposed to that kind of activity. But today we're going to review some of the things that you need to be aware of in between those certifications as a refresher, and also to keep you on your toes when you work around electrical components. So the first thing we want to talk about is the labeling system. Now, there are many types of labeling systems and formats out there, but they have to have a minimum amount of required information on them, and you'll get that in your certification. One of the things that we can look at here is this is an example of your arc flash label, and it gives you incident energy rates. It also gives you your HRC, which we'll talk about, your protection level you need to be around, equipment identification, and so forth. It gives you voltage and distances for your arc flash boundaries, and we're going to talk about that a little bit when we get to it. But realistically, we want to make sure that as technicians we establish a safe work environment, and how we can do that is according to the incident energy produced from that particular piece of equipment, potential voltage that we're working with. Again, you'll find all of these variables within the NFPA 70E, currently the 2018 version. As we progress and understand our environments more, the NFPA Society actually meets on a regular basis and updates this approximately every 3 years. Lately, they have been doing it for every 3 years, over consistently for the last 4 or 5 years, from my knowledge. I think there were some variables when they first started, but every 3 years seems to be how they update their system. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about what this actually means, or to refresh your memory if you might have forgotten it. HRC, that's your hazardous risk categories. Those are the level of protection that you will have for yourself as you're working in potential electrical exposures. Doesn't mean it's automatic that you assume that there's electricity. We only know that there's electricity present when we test it. In order to do that, you have to get into proximity. And if you get into proximity to potential electrical components, then you have to be protected until you know for sure, 100%, that there is no exposure, and therefore you don't need to wear that protection. But up until then, protection is to identify and make sure that you got everything shut off properly, so there's no mishap. Next thing we want to be worried about is our incident energy that we produce, and that is the degree of heat source, and it's measured in calories per centimeter squared. You'll see that on a lot of your tools and your protection mechanisms. It's also part of your calculation for your label systems that the engineers do for us. But we want to understand that when we get to working on, let's say, a 480 panel, and we're dealing with a 30 amp system, it can produce up to about 8 calories per centimeter squared worth of heat. And that's when we need to be wearing some protection mechanisms in place to keep us from getting exposed to that heat. But if we have bare skin available, we need to understand it only takes 1.2 calories per centimeter squared to blister human skin. And that's not much according to the HRC protection categories when we get into it. HRC 1 is a 4, HRC 2 is an 8, then you get into HRC 25, and you get into HRC 3, which is a 25 calories, and then HRC 4 will get you up to 40. Beyond that, that gets into specialty operations, so we won't talk about that here. So we want to understand that incident energy is the measurement of heat that comes from that source when we have an arc fault, or we call it an arc blast or exposure. And we're talking like it's a phase-to-phase, phase-to-ground event where we have that large volume of energy that's released. We want to ensure that before you get started in any activity, that you review the NFPA 70E according to not just the arc flash protection that you need to do, but understand that just because a label says that you're okay to be around it at an HRC 1, if you start diving into that equipment, to do meter testing, to do alterations, pulley lines, things of that nature, the game changes. And then you need to go into those tables to find out, one, what your activity is, two, what the equipment potential is, and then three, that would give you your HRC protection stance when you do that. So be very careful when you're working around your electricity. It's not if a wire is hot, it's always hot until you prove otherwise. And the only way to do that is through a meter. And we'll go through that in another video. So remember, always check to make sure that you've got good equipment to utilize, and then properly put it on and utilize it according to the environment. If you have any questions, give us a call here. And remember, safety is not a mindset, it's a state of mind. Have a good day.